Sam Altman's OpenAI.
An AI.
AI is the biggest
AI researchers.
Artificial intelligence is suddenly everywhere, but these ads all follow the same visual formula. So today I'll show you how to recreate them inside After Effects. You will learn how to turn a simple screenshot into an amazing short advertisement. So without wasting your time, let's begin. So inside Adobe After Effects, you're going to create a new composition by clicking here and then adjusting width to 1080 pixel and height to 1920 pixel and frame rate to 30 frames per second. Also for duration, we're going to set it to 7 seconds and then click OK. So now after you have imported all these elements, we can start with making our animation. So first, we have to create a background. And for that, I'm going to go here and select a rounded rectangle tool. And then I'm going to create this sort of object, for example, this size. And then here in the rectangle and path, increase roundness to around 110. And then here in fill, select opacity to 100% and also decrease stroke to 0 pixels. The next step is to import this UI screenshot. And then as you can see, our background color is different to this background here. So I'm going to go back to shape layer 1 and here in fill, select this eyedropper tool and collect this color here. So now the next step is to increase scale of this shape here. So I'm going to go to transform and increase scale, for example, like this. Keep in mind that this part here will be our sidebar. So when we import our sidebar, we can increase scale to around this size here and then move it around here. So the next step is to create a controller. So why do we use controllers? For example, if you want to move sidebar UI, this background in same motion, we can create a controller and connect all these layers to a controller. And then just by adding adjustments to controller, we can add any effect we want. So here I'm going to create new null object by clicking new and null object. And let's rename it to controller. And then by selecting these 3 layers and connecting them to a controller, we have a parent and child relationship. So for example, if we want to increase scale, this part, the sidebar and the background will also increase in scale. So as you saw in Claude advertisement, the first thing that appears is good afternoon and this type box here. So I'm going to make a copy out of this UI and then I'm going to rename it code, which stands for this first button that we are going to animate. And for our UI section, we're going to create a mask. So create a mask that only consists of greeting and type box. For example, this section here. Now, if we toggle the vision of code, as you can see, we only have what we wanted to include. So for example, if we toggle the vision of UI, we don't have anything. So I'm going to toggle the vision of this layer here, and I'm going to create new mask that only consists of this code button. And then if we create another copy, and then adjust the mask so it only includes right button, we can do that for every other button that we want to have in this animation. So I'm going to speed up that process. So now when we are finished with masking these buttons, I'm going to select all these layers and again parent them to our controller. So now let's start with our first motion. Let's toggle the vision of this section here. So for our first motion, I'm going to animate a scale for our controller. So it only lasts about 1.5 seconds. So at 1:15 frame, I'm going to create another keyframe for scale. And then if we go back, for example, decrease the scale to 58, we have this motion here. Also, make sure that you easy ease these keyframes, and then we can add a little bit more of adjustments. So if we select scale and then open speed graph, and then if we move this hand towards the middle and this left hand slightly until this first rectangle, we can see that we have this more smooth motion. I want to animate this section here. So it appears from the bottom towards the middle. So we're going to move to a 10th frame. And here, let's only add position until the second mark. So here, I'm going to create another keyframe, and let's go back and let's move Y position, for example, here. Then again, let's create easy ease out of these keyframes. And then again, let's go to our speed graph. And by doing the same trick, we can have this animation here. So let's move our timestamp, for example, at 27th frame. And then let's go to our first code layer. And here we want to animate opacity and position. So it appears from invisible to a visible button. Again, let's create another set of keyframes. And then here, let's move position around here and decrease opacity to 0%. And then again, let's create easy ease out of these keyframes. And then by opening speed graph, repeating the same process, we can add this motion here. So we are still in speed graph. I'm going to press Ctrl and select opacity and position and make a copy. And then here on our second layer, I'm going to again press Ctrl for position and opacity and paste. So we copy the same speed graph for our second button. I'm going to repeat the process for the third layer. And then let's again go a couple frames forward, repeat the process, and again repeat the process for the last button. After we go to our first shape layer, I'm going to slightly decrease the size so we can add an orange background, and then later when we move to a sidebar, we can increase the size or even position. So for now, let's add a size keyframe here. Then I'm going to select both of these keyframes and decrease the size. So the next in line is to move from this part to our sidebar. And we can do that from here. So I'm going to create a position and scale keyframe. And I want to finish this animation towards this time frame here. So I'm going to create another set of keyframes. Let's move position, let's increase the scale. So this part is in the middle, for example, like this. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we have to increase the size of our background. So at this section, we want it around here. Also, let's add position. Let's go back. Let's move this a little bit down like this. And let's place it here, for example. You'll see that our sidebar is not in correlation with our animation. So I'm going to remove the parent from our sidebar. And let's animate this sidebar appearing from the bottom. So let's add position and opacity keyframes. Let's go back to, for example, this section here. Then let's move position to the bottom like this, and let's decrease opacity to 0%, and then let's create easy ease. So I'm going to move it towards this section here by adjusting position. Now this sidebar animation is also finished. So the next thing that I want to do is add the orange background by using this color here. So let's go to our rectangle tool and then create a rectangle and then move it towards the bottom. And then let's rename it background. Then I'm going to go to fill and use this eyedropper tool to collect this orange color. So now we're almost finished. So I'm going to go towards this time frame here. And as you can see, if we zoom in, this image becomes raster instead of vector. And we also want to animate it. So we're going to draw these shapes by hand. First, let's go to our rectangle tool and try to be as precise as you can by drawing these shapes. So for example, we're going to remove the fill color. And then let's find a similar color to these. So I'm going to increase stroke width to 2 pixels, or maybe let's increase it to 3. Then let's add rotation 45 degrees. Also, let's center our anchor point in the middle like this. So the next step is to draw this circle here. As you saw in their advertisement, that circle becomes a rectangle and that rectangle becomes circle. So how you can do that is by making a copy, moving it, for example, here, and then open contents and rectangle and path and increase roundness so it becomes circle. So 14 is just enough. Then let's draw this star by going here and selecting star tool and make sure that you create a similar size like this. So let's select this shape, center our anchor point, and let's do it for this star here. So how you can replicate this star here is by going to points, selecting 6, as well as decreasing radius. Decrease it to 5.9. And then let's also increase scale. And here we can add 2 for stroke. So these 3 shapes are done. And this is our last one. So I'm going to draw a rectangle in the shape of our shapes, but we're not going to use this shape here. Let's slightly decrease the stroke like this. And then let's select our pen tool and start drawing our rectangle. But make sure that you create 6 anchor points. So this is our first, this is our middle, and this is our last. And then let's repeat the process here, here, and then here. And then let's connect. So you will see later why we did this. Now let's remove it and let's increase our stroke width to 3 pixels. So now I'm going to show you why we did this. So let's create our path keyframe here and let's keep it until this section here. And then, for example, at 6th second, we're going to end it. So I'm going to select these 2 paths, and then by selecting pen tool, and then by selecting this anchor point and moving it here, and this one here, we can replicate this shape here. And then I'm going to copy this path, paste it here, and that's it. Now I'm going to create keyframes, then I'm going to turn them into eases. So I'm going to increase the size of this star. Let's change this stroke width to 1.5 maybe. Now we replicated these icons, so I'm going to create a rectangle over these shapes, and then I'm going to collect this color, increase fill to 100% opacity, and then connect it to our controller. So the next step is to create another null object for these 4 shapes. So select them and then connect to a null. Also, let's move the anchor point of this null object in center. And you can do it by hand as well. So this anchor point is here in the middle. And then let's move our newly created icons here. So I have imported this cursor, which we will use for our clicking animation. So I'm going to animate it so it appears from the bottom. So let's decrease the scale. So it's positioned here right now, but it will appear from the bottom. For example, at this point here, we're going to move it below these keyframes. And for example, at this point here, it's going to click on this icon. So let's connect this null to our sidebar. So it is moving in the motion. So now the next step is to add clicking animation. So here the cursor is over. Let's add scale. Let's move a couple of frames forward, add scale, and then let's move a couple of frames forward. Let's add another scale. So let's go towards here. Let's increase it to 21. Let's go to first, increase it to 21. And that will create clicking effect. So let's see. Boom. So here, let's add another background for this icon here. So let's decrease the stroke to 0. Let's collect the color. And then let's place it below these 4 icons. So here. And by hand, adjust them to a center. And then here in stroke and path, add a bit of roundness. So the next step is to go to fill, create a color keyframe, and then time it so it is at this section here. So we clicked on it, add another keyframe, and then let's add a little bit of gray. For example, like this. Now, when we clicked on it, our cursor is going to go somewhere else, position here, so it moves, I don't know, above here. Also make sure that newly created shape layer is also connected to our null2. And then let's increase a scale for null2. This is the first keyframe here, and then until this point, we increase the scale. And let's add also position, so it's around the center here. And let's add easy ease to these keyframes. Now, as you can see, we have to time this animation. So I'm going to go back to path and let's place it, for example, here. Now I want to animate these icons moving from this section towards this section. So also let's add position. Let's go here, position again. And this icon will go to the bottom. This will go to the right, this will go up, and this will go left. So let's keep in mind that motion. So let's start with this. I'm going to go to position. Let's time it so it's in the same time frame. So this goes to right. Again, create easy ease. Star goes up. So position here. So let's go up. Here I'm going to also need to add a little bit of decrease in scale. Okay, let's also decrease the scale of this square. For example, like this. Also add easy ease. And finally, the circle. So we're going to find it somewhere. Add position and let's move our timestamp here, position. So we moved it here. Now, as you remember from the start, we have to turn this circle into square and this square into circle. So let's also add roundness, go back, roundness again, and here, toggle it to 0, and then easy ease. And for our square, we have to find it first. Go to rectangle path, roundness, go here, roundness again, and then let's go back, and that's it. Now easy ease. So I don't know what's wrong with this, so I'm going to find it and then connect it to a sidebar, so we don't have it going from the left side. So sweet, that's pretty much over. So I want to create a text box out of this shape. So here, create an anchor point, and I'm going to also extend our composition. So let's add it to 9 seconds, click OK. And then as well, I'm going to extend all these layers towards the 9th second. So let's go back to our shape, create another size keyframe. Make sure that you deselect this uniform scale and only extend this section here. Also, I'm going to add position here. So we center it like this, and let's see what we created. So boom, boom. Okay. Now, as this is extending, I have to add opacity to these shapes. So opacity here and then here, 0. So they disappear. Let's copy this set of keyframes, paste it here, paste it here, and let's see. So only rectangle is left. So I'm going to paste it also here. Now the background also disappears. I'm going to copy our background and move it towards here. And then let's add an opacity keyframe until here. Let's go back, decrease it to 0. And this will create our disappearance effect. And now finally, let's add a text animation. For example, I'm going to use Times New Roman, maybe change the fill color to black. Let's align it in the middle like this. Also, let's change again the fill color to white. So for example, from this section, it goes back to this here. And that's it. Now you have this, bam, bam. And from here, we have to create a text appearance effect. So how you can do that is by creating shapes from text and then contents. You can animate every single letter from the word. So I'm going to go to transform, opacity, and let's say that every letter appears in 5 frames. So let's decrease it to 0, like this. And every maybe 1 frame, we're going to copy for every letter. So that's pretty much it. Now you can create your own animation inside Adobe After Effects in maybe half an hour. If you found this video useful, please leave a like and subscribe. And until the next time, bye.